I spent the first 30 years of my priesthood as rector of parishes. I had 4 parishes. The next 30 years I spent doing stewardship work. I was chair of the stewardship for California, and then at the same time that I was rector at San Carlos in Richmond. And then I was called to New York and went on from there. I was called as the full-time director of stewardship for Diocese of New York. In the course of my ministry, stewardship always seemed to be a pretty prominent thing. When I started out, it was a new congregation, and we had to focus on stewardship a lot because we were self-supporting. And we managed to stay afloat, balanced budgets, raised money, built churches, built a church, and started another church in the next town, built a building up there, which involved capital fund drives. And then all through the years, it seemed that every parish I went into needed help in stewardship. Well, I only mention that just by way of a little background. There are several basic principles that I think ought to be told to any parish. The very first thing that I've taught and preached for years, stewardship is not fundraising. If you ask someone to be on a stewardship committee, the typical reaction is, I don't want to ask people for money. Well, stewardship is a much broader and deeper issue than just financial stewardship. The stewardship of our financial resources is certainly part of our personal stewardship. But Christian stewardship is a much broader and deeper issue. And in fact, the manual title is Stewardship, Education, and Development Through the Year. Education means the phase of the program where we're trying to teach people what stewardship really is. Development is putting that understanding into practice. Incidentally, I usually take 6 hours to do what I'm trying to do in 20 minutes.
I saved you from that.
Thank you, Ann.
I'm under orders to stay at 20 minutes.
Wait, I have a clock.
But anyway, that's the first point that I'd share with you, that awfully important, I think, to get the word across to the parish that stewardship is not just fundraising. In fact, stewardship is not fundraising at all. The stewardship of our financial resources is where the fundraising comes in. The second thing I'd say is another basic principle, which is communication plus ownership equals serious commitment. Put it simply, if people are going to make a real commitment to their parish church, first of all, they need to know what's going on, and secondly, they need to feel that they're really part of it. Now, the program that I'm talking about is a year-round program. We can't really suggest doing the program at the moment because it's too late in the year. But there are some parts that I think could be helpful in the fall, and I think Betsy's already aware of a lot of it. But taking the program as it's designed, parish gets a stewardship committee together not later than the annual meeting. And stewardship committee is 6 people. There's the chair, there's the vice chair, there's the secretary, and then there are 3 other people who are in charge of subcommittees. The first is called the Information Subcommittee. The second is Arrangements Subcommittee. And the third is Commitment Subcommittee. Now, in this program, the work of that Commitment Committee is the closest thing to the old Every Member Canvas, which we all used for years and years. When the committee has their first meeting, they talk about the responsibilities of those subcommittees. And the first is the information, communication. And to describe the responsibility of that committee, we want as many people as possible to know as much as possible about what's going on in the church at all levels, not just the local parish, but what's the deanery doing, what's the diocese doing, what's the province doing, what's the national church doing. And that's not accomplished by just writing a single document. It's an ongoing program, a constant feeding of information. We use various tools such as bulletin boards and occasional speakers. And there's one that I guess you'd call it a gimmick that we used for years called Minute for Mission, which meant that every Sunday at every service, someone got up and in just not more than 3 or 4 minutes said something about something. For example, the head of the Altar Guild might get up and say, I didn't know if you all knew we have half a dozen people on the Altar Guild and they're responsible for preparing for the services, and we meet regularly and we manage the vestments and, just little bits of information about it. Because I tell you, most of a congregation has the slightest idea what an Altar Guild does. Or one of the acolytes gets up, kid, and says, thought you'd like to know we have a dozen acolytes and we assist with the services, as you've seen, and we have regular meetings and we go out to ball games once in a while and, that kind of thing. In other words, just little tidbits. Resources, national publications, diabites from the diocese, Episcopal Church news, what's going on. Right now, someone might get up and say that Episcopal, I forget the name of it, but the National Disaster Relief business, they're helping with this Northern California fire in conjunction with Diocese of Northern California. People ought to know that. Okay, I'm sure you get the idea. As much information as possible to as many people as possible on an ongoing basis about what the church is doing at all levels. And I have found over the years that parishes can be very creative doing that particular assignment. One other thing that it's always been kind of popular through the years is putting a little paragraph in the Sunday leaflet of, did you know? Yeah, and you can cover everything from soup to nuts in that, but only about 3 or 4 sentences. Did you know our rector won $5,000 at the casino? That'd be
No, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, anyway.
That's what creates community. I mean,
yeah. I'm sure you get the idea.
Yeah.
One comment about St. Francis. I would suggest that the bulletin boards in the parish hall be totally stripped, left blank for a Sunday or two, and then new displays be put up. Because the present ones were great when they were first done, but they're still there. And we always have suggested that if you're using the bulletin board as one of your vehicles for the information process, change it every month. Okay, that's the information process, and the manual has a lot more detail you can read for yourselves. The second major task is the long-range planning committee. The long-range planning committee gets underway right away Their work is done during the spring and is finished by the end of June. The long-range planning is the vehicle through which we establish the sense of ownership, because the entire parish gets involved, ideally. Lots of parishes do long-range planning, but it's ordinarily the vestry going off on a retreat for a day that does the long-range planning. And I'm sure they do good stuff, but they miss the opportunity to develop ownership throughout the congregation. And so we have a process through which we do long-range planning. And this parish has already done that a couple of times. There are a couple of things to watch out for as you're doing it. In order to get the process started, we put out a letter to the effect of, if finances were unlimited, forget the exact word, what would you like to see the parish doing in the next 3 years, within the next 3 years? Warning, put a limit on the number of ideas. I was working with a parish in Manhattan, and they really got into it, and when they came into their planning conference, they had 150 ideas. Pretty bad. So, they were all good ideas, but you can't handle that many. So I usually have suggested that parishes limit it to 3 or 4 ideas. Okay, those responses come in and they're organized, shows you how in here. And then you have what we call the parish planning conference. Now, instead of just the vestry going off and going over ideas, we invite the entire leadership of the congregation, the full vestry, the full stewardship committee, and the heads of any other organizations in the parish. The altar guild directress, the church school head, the chair of ushers, the choir director, anyone in any position of leadership. And this group goes off for a full day, and in the course of the day, they sort through all the ideas and begin to set priorities. These things, maybe we could do the first year. These things, try the second year. These things, probably wait till the third year. By the time they finish, every single one of the ideas is listed under one of those years. Then they go back over that plan and they begin to estimate costs of the things which will cost anything. And it's all guesswork, and everybody knows that, but you'd be amazed how close they come out to the actual figures. After they have done that, they total it all up. Then they do something that's absolutely unique in the program. They figure out what the so-called dollar goal will be in the fall. What the goal will be. And the goal is not expressed in terms of dollars. It's percentage. In the course of the process, they decide on a figure which they think is the median household income of the congregation. Now, since you're the stewardship committee, I'll tip you off. You can get that figure from the Chamber of Commerce or Donnelly Management, I forget the name of it. They publish it by zip code. So you come up, the committee has a median household income figure for the zip code in which the parish is situated. And we know not everyone lives in the same area, but anyway, we use that figure. Then they come up with a guess of what the income of the congregation is, what the average income is. Now, you can also get that from the Chamber of Commerce for the community. And if you take the median income of the community, or the average is always lower than median. If you take the average income, add 10% to it, you probably have the local Episcopal and Presbyterian congregations. That comes from the Church and Philanthropy outfit in New York, the national thing. Now, this is all explained in here, but the idea is by the time they finish that day, they have a percentage goal that they're going to shoot for in the fall. And then the long-range planning process is finished for that year, but the implementation of the plan continues being done by the long-range planning committee. Yeah.
So the percentage goals, percentage of this average income
Right.
times the number of pledging units or
No,
congregants?
we don't have a dollar goal at all. We have a percentage, well, the percentage goal is the minimum percent of household income which is suggested as a pledge.
Do that again.
Okay, minimum percent of household income as a suggested pledge. Okay, so
In the
if
background is
household
the-
income is $100,000,
Mm-hmm.
and the goal is 5%, let's say,
Okay.
5,000 per household. Does that cover the entire budget of the congregation, or
Yes.
just these priorities?
Yeah, no, it's actually the percentage, what is pledged is to cover the budget, yeah.
The entire budget. So you go from these creative what-if ideas, 3 or 4 priority ideas,
Yeah,
and then each year.
yeah. We do not make up a budget at that point. The budget is not, what shall I say, presented to the congregation until the annual meeting. The vestry can start working on a budget anytime they want to, but we do not use the budget as the motivation for pledging.
I love that.
If you do that, you're in a fundraising mode, and the program is not a fundraising program.
Yep.
And incidentally, Mary, in this program, nobody has to ask anybody for money.
That's why I'm still here.
Okay, so I'm still confused about how you're linking these what-if priorities, what if, to the Chamber of Commerce designated median
Yeah, okay.
average income plus 10%, and then a percentage goal.
All right. There are two separate issues there. I probably didn't make it clear. One part of the program on that day-long conference is to come up with an estimate of what it would cost to do new ideas.
Okay.
Then a second thing, separate, is to set a percentage goal for the fall.
Unrelated idea, unrelated.
Well, except hopefully the percentage goal, the pledges, will end up covering the new ideas as well as the ongoing budget.
Okay, but they aren't.
But see, what we're trying to,
related.
the basic difference between fundraising and financial stewardship development is where you start. In fundraising, the whole process starts with a dollar goal. A capital campaign is a fundraising operation, quite rightfully so. But ongoing stewardship education is not fundraising in that we do not start with a dollar goal or with a budget. Stewardship, instead of starting looking at dollars, you start by looking at what you have individually, personally. And that's the focus as we begin to set a percentage goal. That's why we focus on the income and a percentage of that income, so on. The next, or excuse me, any other questions about the commitment? I mean, about the long-range planning?
Yeah. If a parish considers themselves poor, or if there are a lot of people on fixed incomes and under the radar, and they're visible people within the community,
Sure.
Is that a stumbling block for this kind of
Not the least
assessment?
bit, because of using a percentage goal. If somebody only gets $3,000 a year, and you don't say, well, your share of the budget would be X number of dollars. What you do say is, we're hoping everybody in the parish will consider a minimum of some percentage.
That's how I was interpreting it. That it wouldn't be, you're not going to say how much money each person has, or you're not going to ask them that. They're going to say what our goal is that if each household, after hearing, because they're not going to be asked the percentage until we've done a little bit of education process, that they buy into it, that they say, oh, this is why I need to support it, okay? You might ask for 3%, I might say, yeah, whatever pie in the sky number you used, I can't do at my household level, but maybe I'll think of 2%.
Yeah, we leave it to them to
That's what I'm
decide.
saying,
Yeah.
you're not going to even do that, but it's not going to be, you're expected to donate such and such dollar amount.
No,
We're
no.
asking you
No.
to
Never
embrace
that.
this
No.
whole process and realize if I'm part of the community, I have to support it. They're asking, based on all these other numbers you played with, they're asking for 5%. If in the ideal world, I would say, no problem, I'll do that 5%.
Yeah. See, a lot of people will already be pledging a higher percentage than is suggested.
Yes.
So that's in our process. Actually, we have a worksheet that goes out to the whole parish. First of all, they figure what percentage of income they are currently contributing to the operating budget of the parish. Secondly, they give serious consideration to increasing that present percentage by at least one more percentage point.
So you're saying percentage of the operating budget, not percentage of income?
percentage of income.
You said
No, you
Oh,
said
you said operating
you
income.
asked people on the worksheet to,
their own operating income, right?
Their
Their
salary.
household.
Yeah,
Their household
Their
income.
household income.
Okay.
What percentage
percentage
of their household income are they currently pledging? Then we ask them to give serious consideration to increasing that percentage by at least one more percentage point. And thirdly, if that doesn't bring them up to the percentage goal that we're suggesting, we hope they'll consider that. That's the strongest language we use.
I'm a convert already. I've just been sitting here for 10 minutes. I'm a convert.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah. Now it's your turn.
Question. No, because, one is net or, and you and I always differ. But the other is, we're also giving to other things like pets in need
That's
or
right.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
How does
Yeah.
that come in there? Or colleges or
We're
whatever?
only dealing with the percentage to the parish. We recognize people may be giving to other things in addition to that.
Do we ever talk about the tithe in here?
Now, wait a minute. All of this is based on the tithe. But you see, there are two ways to teach tithing. The first is you can meet people where they are and help them to grow from that point on. That's our approach. The other approach is hit them over the head with the Bible and say tithe.
I like that one.
Yeah, but it doesn't work.
I know, but I like that one. It gets rid of all my
Yeah,
anxieties.
but-
Stacy
I have
has
an answer to net versus gross.
Oh,
This is
what?
my answer to net versus gross.
This,
David, the priest is talking.
Well, I'm one too.
Exactly. I just want to give my little answer. I just want to give my answer to net and gross. Yes. That's my answer.
Okay,
Oh,
yeah.
no, when they ask
Uh-huh.
me, do you mean gross or net?
You
I
say
say
yes.
it's up to you.
Yes, you
Well, that's
say
what I mean.
yes.
That's exactly what I
Yeah.
mean. Yes.
Yeah. Our figures are based on gross, but no, it's up to you.
Yeah.
This is a very low-key program. No pressure whatsoever by anybody on anybody. The reason it works is attention to detail, good organization, good administration, involvement of as many people as possible, you know, and probably a little psychology involved in it, but, you know, pretty subtle.
The basis to any successful anything. Attention to detail, involvement.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And when the manual was originally published, on the front cover it said, an outline manual. Just the publisher took upon themselves to eliminate that. But the reason I had put outline manual on it was there's no unnecessary wordage in the manual, which is another way of saying every word counts. So when you get your copies of the manual and take them home, I expect it to be your bedtime reading for at least 3 nights.
Right next to my vestry handbook.
Right, exactly.
And the examination, the written exam, will be next.
I don't have money to give them, yeah.
Is that sort of a good summation? I was going to stop recording
Okay,
when.
see, I have mine too.
Did you cover all the major points?
No.
Okay, then let's
6 hours.
It's been 27.
Planning process through which we hope to establish the ownership. The next subcommittee is the arrangements subcommittee, and their job specifically is to pull off the event. When this was all getting started, I tried to think of a general word that would work, and event was the word that settled on. Some kind of a gathering for the whole congregation. I don't really care what it is. I've seen it be a complimentary dinner at a restaurant for the whole parish with the vestry picking up the tab, you know, through the treasury, you know, in a well-off parish.
Arby's.
On the other hand, I've seen it a potluck supper. I've seen picnics. I haven't seen a beer bust yet, but
We're not doing that right.
there's been consideration of that in certain places. A couple of them, one in Canada and one in this country, were held when a major sporting event was going on. So we simply had big TVs there during the meal. But the point is, we want to have an event which will not be just the ordinary parish supper. This is a special event. People look forward to it from year to year. It's a social occasion, they get together, but it's also a teaching occasion, part of the program. And at the event, we have several speakers. One will be the stewardship chair, who thanks everybody for helping and says all the nice things. There will also be the commitment committee chair, I haven't talked about commitment yet, who will spell out the details of Commitment Sunday. We don't call it Stewardship Sunday, we call it Commitment Sunday. Spell out the details of it and also review the worksheet so everybody understands how to use it. And then finally, there will be anyone from the congregation, a person chosen from the congregation by the Stewardship Committee and the rector, who will simply stand up and witness to what the church means to him or her. They're not asking for money or anything. It may be...
Testify.
Yeah, exactly. Witness, yeah.
Yeah, witness.
It may, only one person, you don't have a whole string of them, but it may be Susie Jones, who has sat in that sixth pew for 20 years and never opened her mouth.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, she's up there telling you all why she's been there for 20 years. See, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the event. But the important thing about the event is not just the event itself, but it's an excuse to get a lot of people involved in the program, in the preparation for the event.
Yeah.
We're very specific about the number of hosts and hostesses we want. We want one host or hostess for every 10 households. So if you've got 100 households in the parish, which is close to what this one has, we need 10 people to be on the arrangements committee. And they're responsible for planning and carrying the whole thing out and for getting the attendance. And we have very specific steps on how to get the attendance. There are 3 letters that go out to the parish, and there are 2 phone calls to every household. Now, that's the way the program is set up. Parishes often want to cut corners on that. But I can guarantee to you, every time you cut a corner, you lose money. Usually, the events end up with the biggest turnouts the parishes have ever seen. And I can probably count on one hand the number of parishes that didn't have a huge turnout, and in every one of them, they skipped the second phone call. See? But anyway, that's the event. You can read about it. The commitment subcommittee, one person for every 25 households, smaller, you see, 4 of them. But each of those persons is going to supervise contact persons. Now, we don't use the term canvasser. That's a fundraising term. We use contact person because one way or another, we want to contact everybody in the parish. First of all, in the planning process in the spring. Secondly, for attendance at the event. And also that way, you contact them for a pledge. They can't say nobody ever contacted us. You will have been contacting them in the spring already. I think those are probably the highlights without going into a lot of details. I say it usually takes me about 6 hours to go through the entire program.
Do you want to talk about Commitment Sunday and just a little bit about how the pledge cards are handled?
Sunday.
Commitment cards.
What we usually do is have some tables set up. They could be outside if the weather's decent, or else in the parish hall. And on the front of the table, we have the alphabet, A to E at this spot and F to H at that spot, whatever way your parish list can be divided up. And you have members of the Stewardship Committee at each table, and their commitment, we use commitment, not pledge, their commitment cards are there, and they can go to their proper table and get their card and fill it out and give it right back. We're very hard-nosed about how we handle the cards themselves. We never, there are always exceptions. I grew up under a bishop who used to say, sometimes you have to rise above principle to do what's right. Well, I'll describe the ideal to you, and then I'll give you the other things that happen. After the service, they come to the table, they get the card, they fill it out, give it back, you're done. To protect the confidentiality, there's a big brown envelope at each table, and they put their card in that envelope. So that members of the Stewardship Committee never really know what anybody's pledged. But you'll be surprised how many people don't really care if somebody knows what they pledged. I think it's we make such a fetish of secrecy. It's not necessary. But on the other hand, we do it out of a courtesy. Now, exceptions. Somebody will come to the table and they'll say, we haven't really thought it out yet. I'll just take my card home and send it in. And our stewardship committee member says, gee, I'm sorry, but we've been instructed not to let go of the cards. Because, now I'm sure you would handle it. You would fill it out and send it in. But there are people who would might take it home and set it aside. They might forget about it, just never get around it. And then we have to go call on them. Because one way or another, we're going to get a yes or no from everybody in the parish. So we really prefer that people not take their cards with them. If you want more time, perfectly all right. I'll drop by your house next week. Or we can meet after church next Sunday. See, so in other words, we're kind of tight about it.
Is it possible you can say, well, we'll be here next Sunday with the cards, and between now and next Sunday, give it some prayerful consideration. But we'll be here next Sunday.
Exactly. We usually have the tables and the cards out for at least 2 Sundays.
Yeah.
That's good. Mary has.
I have a question. We do have people who pledge who do not attend services. Now, would those be people, last year with stewardship we called or visited, whatever? Is that something that we would do with this?
Why are they pledging if they don't come to church?
They just like us. We do have some that really do not come on a regular basis. So even if you have that table out there 2 or 3 weeks, you're not going to capture some people.
Well, 2 answers to that. If they come at least once in a while, they might come on Commitment Sunday. And secondly, all of our efforts towards the event may have gotten them going.
But you will have those that...
Oh, well, after we're all through with Commitment Sundays, 1 or 2, we still have people to go call on.
Okay.
That's why in recruiting our contact persons, we try to limit the number of calls they'll have to make to somewhere between 3 and 6. We keep that minimum. Actually, if you have the table of organization the way it's shown in the manual, ideally every contact person has no more than 6 people, and some of those 6 may pledge on Commitment Sunday.
Right.
So it ends up 2 or 3 calls. And then we have method of training them for those calls in the homes. I don't know.
And then the commitment, it ends in December. You try to get all the
December
cards in by
31st is
December
the deadline.
31st.
Actually, we try to finish it up by the end of November, so the vestry has December to finalize their budget.
Right. Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
The timing of the event, does that come first, middle, last, or is that just depending on what we decide, or
Well,
is it a culminating event?
yeah.
It's usually like a week or 2 before Commitment Sunday is how
A
we've
week
done
to
it.
10 days before Commitment Sunday. I'm gonna.
the event is not Commitment Sunday.
No, it is separate and above board.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Bev, you don't have one, do you?
All right, so we'll get you the book. All right, I'll stop recording now, okay? That was
Manual.
Oh, all right.
All right, I'd like to have you just to have a quick introduction to the manual. No, I already said it used to say outline manual as a reminder that every word counts. First of all, look at the copyright page. There's a note on there that's important. It lists all the things in the manual which you're free to duplicate without violating the copyright if you're using the program. You see it on there? Okay, then the table of contents gives you the overview. The glossary, the reason that's there was I worked with several dioceses in Canada see, when I was working for New York, I used to get these invitations to go out to other dioceses and other parishes. And Canada and the Bahamas called me too. The vocabulary in the Anglican Church in Canada is different than ours. So I put in the glossary for people to understand what we're talking about. And that's also useful because
I hate to interrupt you, David, but can I ask you? Sorry, you did.
was the glossary is also useful for other denominations because the program has been used by other churches too. All right, then there's the foreword, obviously. Then the introduction. This is pretty important because this is really the meat of the whole thing. This is the theology of the program. Then Roman numeral 9, a note from Canada. Rick Jones was the guy who brought me into Canada to work with 4 dioceses up there. And this is a note he wrote about the program. All right, page 1, getting started early in the year. That's just a plug, but it's pretty important. Page 2 describes the Stewardship Committee. Down at the bottom, the first meeting of the Stewardship Committee. Page 3, membership of the Stewardship Committee. Page 5 begins to talk about the calendar. Pages 6 and 7 deal with the calendar. Parish after parish has told me that they felt this calendar was one of the best things in the program, because in the very first meeting of the Stewardship Committee, they work out the calendar and everyone knows exactly what is supposed to happen and when it's supposed to happen during the entire year.
And Betsy's superb on that.
I put it in Microsoft Project.
Oh, fantastic.
So it's all, so you can edit it each
The
year.
thing
It
is,
generates the dates.
Yeah. When you start working out the calendar, I suggest you really follow the instructions. I don't, you probably did already, but there's a system for doing the calendar which makes the life a lot easier.
Right.
And what it does is reflect the spaces between the various dates. In other words, the timing of the various things that are happening is very important. Page 9 starts talking about the information process. Page 11 talks about, 10 is details. 11 is the long-range planning process. 12 are the meetings. Then a sample long-range planning letter. Then the parish planning conference, page 15. And the invitation for the conference is 16. The conference itself is on 17, the agenda. That's 17 and 18. The worksheet on page 19 you can ignore. A layman in New York designed this and it was helpful, but you are going to have way too many ideas. I mean, you'll have page after page of this worksheet, and you don't really need it. But what it does show you is how we handle the ideas in the planning conference with news clips. Those are the columns that we have in the news. And if you want to use it, you can, but don't feel you have to. The next page is the worksheet for setting the minimum percentage goal for the next year. Then on page 21 it talks about the summer months, which is when we do office work. Get the parish list corrected and prepare materials all spelled out for you there. The commitment subcommittee, page 22, and the arrangements committee there also tells you what they're doing. The contact information card, there's just a suggestion there. The reason we 25 are some report forms. Page 27 and 28 is a suggested model for a local, what we call the local brochure. We call it, no, this is the information card for the people who are going to be contacting parishioners. This goes right along with the commitment card. The commitment card is on page 24. The reason we call it a commitment card instead of a stewardship card, a pledge card, is because pledge, of course, just talks about money. The card